Well, extreme heat and heavy rain have had a major impact on power supplies over the southeast of the country. South Australia was cut off from the national electricity market, while Victorians were told to minimise their electricity use. Joining me live now is Alex Giorgio from Shine Hub, the CEO. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me, Charlotte.
Or I should say this afternoon. Alex, tell me a little bit about, I guess, yesterday was really the summer's biggest power supply crisis. Do you think that we're likely to see more of this from your point of view in this sector?
Absolutely. And the reason is because Australia's grid is very old and centralised, and it was designed to bring power from faraway power stations through big power lines and into the communities. And that's just not working very well anymore.
So obviously we do have a huge continent. So the original idea, I guess, of that makes perfect sense. It is very logical. But is this, are we too far behind now? Has technology advanced to a point where we should have got rid of that model?
Well, now it has. If you look at the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen power prices go up astronomically, more than doubling in that time period. That's because we've been investing in getting bigger wires to try and transmit more power when it's needed. However, we're still not seeing that working very well because more air cons are being put in, more power is being used. The cities are being more condensed as well. And so it's just not enough. And that's why we have blackouts. There's not enough power to go through those lines as what's needed in the communities themselves.
So surely there must be other countries that have had similar issues to what we're going through now.
Definitely. My dad lives in San Francisco right now, just outside in the suburbs. And he called me a few months ago, standing outside of Costco, waiting in line for a cooked chicken because they had fires as well. They had to turn off their power lines for safety reasons. And so the entire community, a half an hour drive in any direction, was completely blacked out. So the only place that had food was Costco because they had a backup power system.
Wow.
And so people were waiting in line to get a chicken so they could go bring it to their families and eat.
So then how do we solve this? Because it sounds like to overhaul that entire system would be A, very costly, and B, very time consuming.
Yeah, and the great part about it is we don't need to overhaul the entire system. Right? The wires are already there. The key thing is we need to change where the power comes from. Right now it's coming from big power stations far away, and so it's getting congested in these lines. What we need to do is activate local community power that's sourced right in the communities that's needed, and that way it can supply and support and prevent blackouts without needing to go through these big power lines.
So what do you mean in the sense of those local community power supplies? What sort of examples are there of that?
Well, take, for example, solar batteries. Right? Imagine in a community and you had thousands of people with solar batteries in their houses. Those batteries can soak up power when we have it available, and then when we need it, like in days like today, it can deploy that and send that power back into the grid and then support the community and prevent blackouts.
So that community power wouldn't be used on a day-to-day basis. It would be when the power is depleted at.
Exactly. So if you think about when is power needed, there's certain times of the day when a lot more power is needed. And today when it's hot, that's even bigger of a spike because of air cons and things like that. And so there's a kind of a baseline amount of power that's always needed, which is there, but then you need this kind of quick response, instant spike to support and prevent the blackouts. And that's what the home batteries can provide. And when you do that together with hundreds of thousands of other people, it's called a virtual power plant.
The ACT and South Australia, they've taken some pretty interesting steps towards changing their energy supply. What are your thoughts on them?
Well, the states are moving in the right direction. It's just a matter of how fast. Everyone is looking at, in the last 12 months, there's probably a dozen virtual power plants being trialed across the country. And South Australia is the most advanced right now. And they've put in a program to incentivize batteries, to incentivize virtual power plants, and that's going very, very well. And we hope to see that happen more across the country.
South Australia really only did that, though, that huge overhaul, after they had some really terrible power outages. They were almost forced to look at other options.
Well, and unfortunately, it's usually those crises that prompt action.
Yes.
Right? Because and when the power lines went down, people realized how fragile electricity supply really was and how reliant we are on a couple of very important lines. And so whether it's the fires causing them to be shut down or weather and trees, whatever it may be, we need to be more resilient, we need to be more self-sufficient, and we can do that through locally made virtual power plants.
Do you see that as being the only way forward, the only way we can fix the power supply problem?
There's no one single solution, right? We need to shift towards a more dynamic solution. So, for example, the Tesla big battery in South Australia, that's a big battery that kind of sits near some communities. That is definitely one way to help. But you're still relying on the lines to bring the power to them. So I think it's a mixture of residential batteries, other batteries, things like the hydro and other solutions to that. But the key thing is, instead of having big power plants that deliver power over a long period, we need more smaller, local, distributed power that is smartly controlled and used at the right times.
So then does every household need to have a battery, or would it be more so the councils kind of saying, oh, we will have one in this area and one in that area?
It's a mixture of both. I mean, not every home can have solar panels, and so it's not really financially viable to get a battery if you don't have panels.
Yeah.
For example, if you're in an apartment, there's no way you're gonna do that. But even with the current 2 million homes in Australia, if all of those, with the 2 million solar homes in Australia, if all of those homes had batteries, we could have a sizable impact. I saw some studies saying that in 10, 15 years, this is more developed at scale, we could see 1/3 of Australia's energy coming from residential virtual power plants, residential batteries. So the opportunity is there, the technology is there, and we just need to get help to accelerate this quicker so we can make this happen faster.
I did want to read you one quote today. The Chief Executive of New South Wales Tomago Aluminium Smelter has said that we're seeing the lack of supply in the market. We desperately need more baseload power, so we're not in this situation going forward. What are your thoughts on that?
So baseload power is just the base amount of power that you need to provide to make sure everything is on all the time. In South Australia, it's a really good example. There's a new steelworks center that has a solar and battery generation and storage center right next to it, and that is totally supplying that particular manufacturing center. So one way of doing it is build more coal power plants, but then you have to upgrade the lines to bring the power to these manufacturing centers. The other option is to put renewable energy and storage right next to it, and that's actually much, much more reliable because the coal power plants have been failing in the high heat as well. They're not as reliable as the national narrative makes it seem to be.
Okay, well, that was some great explanations there. I really appreciate the insight there. Alex Giorgio from Shine Hub.